What if I were to show up at your house completely unannounced? Like me, just stopping by. What would I determine were the priorities in your life based on what I found? Well, hello friends, I'm Mary Beth with At What Cost, where simple living and deep faith go hand in hand. And I have been asking myself this question about priorities a lot lately. So we know that there is an intended priority list, right? We have God, our husbands, and then our children. And sometimes, especially in certain seasons of life, those priorities can get a little shaken up. But we know that we're working towards keeping all of those things in the right alignment as we encounter all of the circumstances throughout our day. But I've started to wonder, what does my home say about my priorities? If someone were to come into my home completely unannounced, which by the way is my nightmare too, you're not alone in that. I have little things that I don't want people to see that are just kind of like sitting out, little messes, and the kids have brought toys from upstairs, downstairs, and there's things just kind of all over the place. Those things happen at my house too. And although we get really self-conscious about that, I kind of feel like people are a lot more forgiving in those areas than we give them credit for, because their house is likely messy in those ways too, or it could actually be worse. We all tend to think that like we're the only ones, right? But that's just not true. We're all battling something, and the things that are happening in our house are going to be a reflection of that. Now, the trouble comes in when the priorities that are reflected in our home don't really line up with God's good, right order for our priorities. So maybe your house is kind of messy right now. Well, that could say a couple of things, right? It could say that you have small children at home and you're kind of chasing after them, trying to keep up with the mess, or you stop dealing with some of the mess because it's really important to you to connect with them and spend time with them, and you tend to clean up later after they've gone to bed. But your house could be a little messy because your priorities are not quite in line. Maybe you send your kids off to play somewhere and you watch Netflix for hours on end, or you're constantly scrolling Instagram hoping that someone will have an answer to the problems that you have. Or maybe you spend a lot of time comparing your circumstances with others around you and you get defeated and you stop wanting to take care of things. As a busy working mom, it can be very difficult to prioritize, but that's part of our call as Christian women, to bring order out of chaos in our homes. So when it comes to our stuff, our priorities really mean something there. If hanging on to all of this extra stuff is a higher priority than really getting rid of it so that we can open up time to spend time with our children, spend time with our spouse, spend time with God, our priority really shouldn't be all of this extra stuff that's laying around. Before family minimalism, I had a lot of priorities. We've adopted 3 kids from foster care. That is a high priority. Their relationships are intense. The time that we spend with them can be kind of intense. And in the past, my kids haven't always been able to entertain themselves. And quite frankly, they needed my presence for their security, which is true for a lot of children. Don't get me wrong. But coming out of a really difficult family situation really meant that our kids' needs were a high priority in that season of life. Having 2 of our children with special needs also kind of amps up the priority list with our kids. And of course, I want to spend good and meaningful time with my husband to strengthen our relationship. That only helps to strengthen my relationship with my children. But I also had a lot of stuff that was kind of hanging around that I also thought was important, or I just didn't know what to do with, but it felt important, too important to get rid of at least. We were having a discussion the other night in my small group about this concept of the tyranny of the urgent, which we have talked about a lot on this channel. There is this ongoing cosmic kind of warfare for our attention. There are things that are urgent, there are things that are important, and oftentimes our to-do list far outweighs our capacity to actually complete all of those things during the time that we've been allotted. There are distractions that keep us from spending our time with the Lord or really doing things out of a motivation to glorify Him. And so when we are overcome by the things that feel urgent or feel important in the moment, and we forego our time spent in God's Word, time in prayer, connecting and ministering to our children and to ourselves through God's Word, we really can start to feel like our priorities are all out of whack. And when it comes down to it, for many of us, there could be nothing more important than time spent with the Lord. There could be nothing more urgent than having relationship with Him. In fact, when we look at our good and right order given to us by God, He is our top priority, then our husbands, then our children. So although all of these things may feel important, maybe because we've spent money on them, or they are useful, or they could be useful to someone else, or maybe they'll even be useful to us in the future, when we prioritize those things above taking care of our children, taking care of our husbands, and spending time with the Lord, all the things sort of get out of whack. Now, it's been my experience that having a lot less in my environment and to manage has really helped me to shift priorities. I feel more capable of spending time with my children when I don't have mountains and mountains of laundry to do, or even help them with for that matter. We've started this summer giving our children the chores of folding and putting away their clothes. Now, for some of you, folding laundry is not that big of a deal, and that's okay. We can still be friends. But for me, I want our kids to take some time to put their laundry away, to look at the things that they have and appreciate them, to take care in caring for them. And so having a time where they can fold their clothes and put them away in their drawers is really a practice in stewardship for them. But if they have mountains and mountains and mountains of clothes to put away, they're going to get overwhelmed and they're not going to want to do it, and it's not going to be fun for any of us. So having just the bare minimum that they are responsible for and that I have to keep up with has really gone a long way in keeping our priorities in line. And the same goes with things like our kitchen or our bedroom or our bathrooms or my office. Having only the bare essentials in those areas and maybe a little more. We don't need to go to extremes to feel the benefit of reprioritizing our lives. But having those things easy to clean up means that at the end of the night, when dinner is over, after I've actually cooked a good, wholesome meal, because I have a lot more bandwidth and the dishes are already done, cleanup is super easy. The dishwasher's already empty. I put things in it and we're done for the evening, which means now I have time available for my husband to connect with him. And most importantly, because everything is cleaned up and ready to go the next morning, I can actually get up in the morning and spend time with the Lord, preparing for my day, getting in the right mindset, connecting with Him, and having my cup filled. I was thinking about this concept the other day of reprioritizing my life and making sure that things are in the good and right order that God gives us. And although I am a big proponent of quiet time anytime throughout the day, I started thinking about my own personal quiet time that I do in the morning. I feel the most capable of giving God my complete and undivided attention during that time. In fact, I was kind of thinking about it as being similar to giving God the first fruits of my time. Before the pressures of the world come in, before my children are calling for me and they have needs that have to be filled, before my husband's up or needing things that he has to have done, wanting to have conversation, all of these good and wonderful things that make our lives fulfilling and wholesome and good can also be the things that sometimes overwhelm us. And having our priorities in line, getting time in God's Word, and living with a lot less so that we are good stewards of not just our things, but our time could not be more urgent and could not be more important. Now, if you would like to know more about starting your quiet time, I would love for you to check out the video right up here. Thanks so much for watching, and until I see you again, keep fighting the good fight.